Hello everyone, Lit here, and that is the damage from frostmage. The boss on the showcase is on T15 with +2 difficulty, so the damage is not bad at all. Also, this frostmage is on 5 ling, and this is because I don't have a currency to 6 ling it, because I spent all my currency to upgrade my gear, and this amulet is really expensive. So this video will not be a full guide, but I want to talk about the current setup a little bit. So first let's talk about the pro and cons for Skeleton Frostmage, especially if we compare them to Arsonist, because Arsonist is the mainstream minions right now. So the first one is Frostmage is short range, and the reason why this is con is because how minion works right now. If you bring the minion into close space, they will get stuck, so they basically body block each other's. So the minion that do not have a long range will not be able to attack. Only few of them at the front can do that, and the rest of them is just doing nothing. And this can go really bad if the minion is melee, something like Reaver or Brute. Like Skeleton Reaver is really good minions. I tried, the single attacker damage is amazing. But for the clearing, it just gets stuck all the time, and only 2 of them in the front they can attack, while the rest of them do not have a range to attack, so they're just doing nothing. And this is basically the major problem with the minion builds right now, and I really hope GGG going to fix it soon. And Frostmage still suffer from the same thing, but in lesser extent, because this is still range, even though the range is not that long. Is still able to attack, but the problem is still there. The second con is the synergy. For example, to apply exposure on the Arsonist setup, we're using Infernal Hound with fire exposure, and because the Hound have Ignite Aura, the exposure is basically free. You don't have to press any button, it's just apply and it's pretty consistent. In Frostmage, we have to use Frostbomb to apply exposure, so we have one extra button. The same goes for SRS. We're still using SRS because is 30 spirit, 10 minion is decent amount of damage, so I feel stupid if I'm not using it. But when you combine it with Frostmage, Raging Spirit deal fire damage and physical damage, and Frostmage deal cold damage. So the curse we're using is Frostbite because the main DPS is from the Frostmage. So the Raging Spirit end up doesn't have a benefit from the curse. And the third con is the clear speed. Arsonists have a decent AoE just by itself. So when you scale AoE, the area become quite big, and that makes it really good at clear. While Frostmage also have explosions, but the AoE is pretty small, so we have to scale quite a lot to get a decent size of explosions. Now let's talk about the pro of Frostmage. The first pro is Spirit Reservations. Today we have a patch note that make the Arsonist Spirit Reservation match other Skeleton Mage. But Frostmage have a quality on the gem that reduce Spirit Reservations by 10%. And that makes Frostmage at level 26 only reserve 29 Spirit, while Arsonist and Stormmage reserve 33 spirit. These 4 spirit differences may look small, but it will be a huge difference when you have 10 to 15 minions. And the second pro is damage, and I think Frostmage have a better DPS than Arsonist, especially if we're talking about single target. As shown earlier in the showcase, the damage is really strong. And that's not including scaling crit. And this is because Frostmage have a base crit of 11% based on the PoE2 DP, and for Arsonist, it only have 5%. And scaling 5% base crit is a lot harder than scaling 11%. So even though I don't know if scaling crit is the way to go, but the possibility to scaling crit is possible because the base crit of the Frostmage is 11%. And the third pro is defense. Frostmage deal cold damage, and it frees everything. And that means less damage can reach you. And also doing boss becomes a lot simple because the boss just freeze, and even though they break out from the freeze, they're going to have chill, which makes them slower, so it's easier for you to deal with the bosses. So able to freeze like this for me is a layer of defense. And that's all the pro and cons, so let's move to the setup. So the passive tree is basically look exactly the same as the last time. The most important note over here is this 4 note over here. This gives total 50% increase area of effect. In my opinion, if you play Frostmage, this 4 point is mandatory. And also there's another AoE point over here, this 20%. You can also try to get this note if you want more AoE. But from my test so far, this 4 note is decent enough. And another thing also with the passive tree, we already have the access to the mini crit note. So let's say over here, we have 40% increased critical hit chance, and we have some crit damage bonus, and it's also the same thing over here. And we also have a jewel like this, where it basically give you critical hit chance, attack speed, and damage. So if we decide to scale crit, it's definitely possible with Frostmage. Now let's talk about the gem setup. The Infernal Hound is still using mid shield and the army, and the wildfire just to increase the ignite a little bit, doesn't really matter in my opinion. And we have fire exposure, and we also have last caps, so when the Infernal Hound die, it will hold another 4 seconds, and hopefully after that we have them revive already. So the defense benefit from the Infernal Hound will be more consistent. And the next one is Raging Spirit. Like I said, we're still using it because it's 30 spirit reservations, and it's just a very efficient minion gems. And we're using Minion Mastery, Fire Mastery, Immolate, Have, and Martial Tempo. As for the Skeleton Frostmage itself, I'm using Arcane Tempo because Frostmage is a spell base, so we're using Cast Speed. And then we use Scatter Shot. This will make them throw 3 projectile, and the 3 projectile can explode. The projectile itself cannot shotgun because in Path of Exile, 1 projectile will only hit 1 target. So if you shoot 3 projectile, that 3 projectile cannot go into the same target. But for the Frostmage, whenever the projectile hit the target, it will explode, and that explosion can shotgun. So the explosion from the other projectile can hit the same target. And this is the reason why Scatter Shot is really good on Frostmage, and the same reason also is good for Arsonist. And we put Fleeting Frenzy. The take 20% more damage doesn't really matter because, like I said earlier, they freeze everything, so this is basically a free damage. And Cold Mastery for +1 level. And for the last one, I'm still not sure what gems I want to put at it. Based on what I see, is probably something like Magnified Effect to give it more area of effect because we really need that AoE. And the next one I have Eye of Winter. This one is really not necessary. The only reason why I have Eye of Winter up here is to inflict critical weakness. And because the crit base from the Frostmage is already quite big, it does give quite a lot of DPS. So Unleash and Less Projectile, I think this is the only mandatory part. And Unleash will make you shoot 2 Eye of Winter, and that's basically make you able to cap the critical weakness debuff to 10%. I put here Ineffable Critical. This is not necessary. I try to see like how much damage I can do with it. It doesn't do any damage, so just ignore this one. This one is not necessary. And the Pain Offering is still the same. Font of Rage, Font of Blood, Font of Mana. This is Life and Mana Regenerations. And this one is new, Expanse. This gives your offering 50% area of effect, but it have +6 cooldown. And so far, I don't see the downside of the +6 cooldown because the duration from the offering is 6 seconds, so you pretty much can always use the offering after the offering dies because the cooldown start when you cast the offering. And for the curse, we are using Hypothermia because the main damage is cold. And I'm using Inspirations, Heightened Curse, and Hexbloom because I'm mostly doing mapping, and Hexbloom is really good for mapping. And for the Frostbomb, this is how we apply exposure. We link it with Strip Away to increase the effect of the exposure, and also Magnified Effect to increase the area from the Frostbomb. This is not necessary whatsoever. Another gem you can put here is also Persistence. This is going to give skill effect duration, so the Frostbomb lasts a little bit longer. Although I don't think this is necessary, but this is something you can put into. And the Flame Wall here, I'm still using Flame Wall because the Frostmage still doing projectile, and every projectile that goes through the Flame Wall will still have a little bit extra damage. Also, I will need it to spawn SRS, so I'm still using Flame Wall because of that. One note over here is you don't have to use Eye of Winter. The showcase that I'm showing you, I do not cast Eye of Winter. As I said before, I don't know if scaling crit is the way to go, but for me personally, this is just a free DPS, and I'm only using this like on bosses because that's the only time it matters. So that's about the gem setup. For the gear, it's still mostly the same. I will just hover it a little bit. You can pause if you want. The difference from the setup from my last video is this shield over here. I just trying to get as much spirits as I can. I'm right now at 580. I think if I get everything fully upgraded, like T1 spirit here and there, I probably can reach like 650 probably. I don't know the exact number, but it probably around there. So I just want to test that one out. You really do not need this much spirit. So that's all I have for you today. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comment below. I will try my best to answer it. And if you like the video, consider like and subscribe. That will help the channel a lot. And thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next one.